Well, here we are. Hi, everybody. I'm Annie Brock, President and CEO of the Leader Transition Institute. And I've got my friend Rhett Byer with me today, and I'm going to introduce him in just a minute. I want to say thank you for all of you for being on today, and just a little few comments about the Leader Transition Institute before we dive into what we're here for. So, the Leader Transition Institute is a Maryland based nonprofit organization. We do corporate and government communications and leadership training to create revenue for our veteran transition program, Changing Focus Moving from We to Me. We provide that free to service members, military spouses, and veterans of any era. So we provide the opportunities like this one that we do monthly, our Learn, Do, Grow, Repeats, to provide continuing education for the alumni of that program. We've done 53 cohorts so far, really proud of that. But we also know that this kind of information that we're talking about applies to many people besides those who are service members, veterans, and military spouses. So that's why we live stream across the world with these events. And I am particularly honored today and pleased to introduce you to my friend Rhett Byer. For more than 30 years, Rhett has been engaged in operational leadership, human resources, manufacturing, retail, automotive, and education training. I've gotten to know Rhett through the Maxwell Leadership Certified team, which he says he joined as a hobby because he's passionate about personal development. But he's found that as he's put the resources to use in ways that are much more than a hobby, and he's done a lot of good with that. And I'm proud to say that he's a member of our Maxwell Leadership Culture Awards Committee, which I chair. Now, throughout his career, Rhett has been known as a team builder, a bridge builder between people and organizations. He has worked at the corporate level for companies such as Advance Auto Parts, the Home Depot, and Fisker. Currently, Rhett is a program manager for faculty training and development at Southern New Hampshire University. He says he's driven by his personal philosophy of nobody will outserve his team better than he can, and that spills over into his desire to see others grow to their full potential in life. Rhett and his wife live in Alabama with their fur babies, and he's the father of 4 adult children and grandfather to their 7 children. And we are fortunate and grateful to get some of his time today to show that he can share with us what he's learned about being prepared for company downsizing. So take it away, Rhett.
Well,
Thank you.
Annie, first and foremost, thank you so much for the invite today. When we were talking about this, I think last summer is when we started talking about this around August when we were at Maxwell or even
Mhm.
before that. I was incredibly excited, not necessarily because of the topic, but it was because of the topic as well, because it's an important topic to really talk about and navigate in the era that we live in. And I don't want to say that there haven't been other time frames where there's been a lot of downsizing, but it's really hard to turn on the news nowadays and not see another company, Tesla, Facebook, small companies, big companies that are downsizing, making significant changes. Folks are losing jobs. And there's good news as well, but it's a topic that's really important. And so what we're going to do today is again, the topic header is navigating the era of downsizing. What I really want to talk about is a couple things though. First and foremost, I don't want to sit here and tell you that I can give you a 100% foolproof method to avoid being downsized. That's not possible. There's a lot of things that happen with companies. There's governmental changes, there's industry changes, there's new product entries, there's companies that make financial mistakes or run into a hard time, and those impact the ability of that company continuity. And sometimes they're faced with decisions to have to downsize or even shut down. But what I do want to talk about today is to really give you some strategies around how you can help yourself or improve the odds. And you'll see one of my favorite Hunger Game quotes here. Give me just 1 second here. I need to. I apologize. I am fighting a little bit of a cold today, so I may have to do that a few times. But one of my favorite quotes are, "May the odds ever be in your favor." And my desire today is to be able to really deliver some strategies and things that you can do to help position yourself well if you are encountering one of those times when are being downsized, or there's worries about being downsized, or just you want some peace of mind about how to navigate downsizing. Now I'm a data guy. I love data. I like to see what's going on out there in the industry. And so I went out to Market Watch and I found a study, a recent one, I think within the last year, and it gave me some really interesting context for the conversation today. What it said is that when you look at the entire workforce, and again, this is extrapolated out from the study, roughly 70% of employees are thinking, bracing for, or thinking about that there may be a downsizing or a layoff coming. So that says the majority of our workforce, this is a topic that's on their minds, which to me says it's one we need to talk about. About 40% are saving up, and another 32% that they're out looking for other jobs because they're worried about the continuity of their current job. And when you start to break this down into the different generations we have in the workforce, approximately five of them at this time, you look at that baby boomers. It happened, but it didn't happen like it is with the modern era. Gen Z workers are really the ones that have the highest percentage of fear over losing a job or fear over job continuity in some way. Another reason I think we need to talk about this, and you'll hear me talk about this a little bit later when I start talking strategies, is that when you think about losing your job, the first thing that comes to your mind is, oh my goodness, how am I going to put food on the table, keep a roof over my head, keep gas in the car, keep my kids going to school and all the activities they have going on, or even think about retirement. What they found through this study is that about 40% of workers said they would run out of money within 1 month, and 24% they don't even have enough in savings to make it past the next paycheck, maybe the one after that if they're fortunate. And this is not a slam on anybody. This is just the facts as this study shows. They also said that majority of employees would take a downsized position, step back, less money or whatever to really be able to maintain that continuity. Which, when I think about the analytical side of that, I start thinking about folks are worried about being in the job market. They're worried about, can I find that next job? So when you go a little deeper into the study, it breaks it down into a whole lot of different information. Starts talking about who's more prepared, who's less prepared, comparing renters and homeowners, and if you make over 50K, under, male, female. There's a whole lot of data out there to support that really says not everybody's ready, and the overwhelming of folks are not ready to weather the situation if this were to happen to them. And so, what I'm going to chat about today is really four different sections. I'm going to talk about developing a contingency plan just in case you're one of those folks that eventually get affected by this. Hopefully, that's not the case. And statistically, it may not be, but it doesn't hurt to plan. And we'll talk more about that. We'll also talk about how to evaluate a job at a company. When you're thinking about where's my next job, or I'm looking for a next job, it doesn't hurt to think also is, does it look like that job's going to be around in 10 years, or that company? No one has a crystal ball. We understand that, but there are indicators you can look at now that at least say there's a pretty good chance that company looks like it's going to last a while longer. And also, how do you position yourself? I'm going to give you some insight into the process of downsizing, who's looked at first, and how you can position yourself to be several layers in before your name comes up to be considered as a downsized or a layoff person. And then I'm going to walk you through what the experience is like. What it happens when I get that phone call and my boss is on the call with HR and they want to talk about my job. What's that experience like, and what am I going to experience? This will take probably about 20, 25 minutes. And then, Annie, I think we may have some questions or whatnot. We can go from there.
That's perfect. I love this. As a former Army helicopter pilot, I had to memorize emergency procedures, so I'm really excited that the first step, the first thing you're going to talk about is developing a contingency plan.
Awesome. And then we might as well jump right in here. I'm a picture person. Ben Franklin, I just finished reading his biography. I've got it over on my bookshelf here recently, but he has a quote that he's known for, and it's, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. The reality is this: you may never experience being laid off or downsized or affected by this your entire career, but the reality also says you may. And I can tell you from 27 years of being in human resources, the reason I'm passionate about talking about this topic is because been on both sides of this. I've been on the side where I'm executing, where I'm having to go talk to people to let them know they don't have a job. I've been on the side where I'm planning, I'm partnering with leaders. Who are we going to reduce in this role to meet the objectives that we're giving? And then I've also been in a situation where I was in a company downsizing, and I also knew I was going to lose my job in time as well. So what I'm sharing is things that I've learned and I've seen and I've observed and I've had feedback on. And that's what really, Annie, what helped develop this. It doesn't hurt to prepare for the what if, even if that what if never happens to you. So what does this look like? Where I tell people to start when you're thinking about potentially being downsized is you need to look at your resume to start with. You need to start thinking about getting some feelers out there, what's going on in the working world. I'm a big proponent of LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, that's a-okay. I recommend it because it is one of the better. It's not there's others out there as well. And I'm I could always be, maybe it's not the top one now, but for me it's been one that over the years it's great to build a network. A lot of times when individuals lose their job, you'll see that green little circle in their photo, open to work, tons of networking. It doesn't hurt to have that out there, but start with your resume. And if you think, maybe I haven't developed a resume, or maybe I haven't developed one in years, or maybe I've never received feedback on mine. Annie and I recently looked at my resume, 27 years in HR. I thought I knew resumes. I found out I did not know resumes as well as I thought I had. It doesn't hurt to partner with someone to take a look at your resume. You
Can,
can, there's
can
free,
I can I just say
you
that
sure can.
if people go to the leadertransitioninstitute.org and click on the events tab, you'll see a calendar. I do 3 hours of resume office hours every week that people can sign up for, and anybody can sign up for that and send me their resume. I'm happy to look at it and then register for a session. So if you want help, it's available.
And don't be surprised if she finds a lot, because I learned this, but it was in the spirit of helping me develop a better resume. So again, thank you, Andy. Yeah, and there are other resources out there. There's job services, unemployment centers, employment resources that you can have partnership on your resume. But when you're starting to think about a contingency plan, think about your resume, because that's really your ticket to get invited into interviews, potential jobs, is that resume. And how do you make your resume really shout out what your experience has been, the things you've accomplished, and really draw the attention of recruiters, especially in the days of applicant tracker systems. And I won't go into much more than that, but it does. Typically, a resume that can draw attention to your particular one is important,
Well,
especially nowadays.
Grant, what I think you just said, and what is most important, and the failure that I see in most resumes is you talked about putting accomplishments in there. Too often, resumes just read like a job description, and if you don't do anything else in the resume to do what you said, to put the accomplishments in is key.
Absolutely, you want to shout out why you're the person that they need to hire. So another thing I would encourage you to do is I'd encourage you to get a piece of paper out and start writing down, if I were laid off next week, what are the decisions I'm going to have to make? Can I afford to continue with childcare, or do I even need it then? Can I, what am I going to do to pay my light bill? What about food? What if I run out of resources? Start thinking through. And again, I don't want to create worry. This is just developing a contingency plan. What are the decisions I'm going to have to make if 2 paychecks from now I no longer have a source of income? Or maybe I have a little bit of unemployment and that's it while I'm job hunting. So, what are some of the different resources? What are some of the different things I'm going to have to look at? Also, I highly encourage, if you have a significant other in your life, you're married, whatever your case is, bring them into the conversation early on, even if it's just contingency planning, because they may have ideas or thoughts you're not thinking about decisions you're going to have to make, or potentially ideas to help navigate this time frame if this would happen to you. Also, take a look at your finances. What I tell people is, if you can somehow pull this off, and it's difficult, I've been there, I understand. Try to have at least 3 months of income to sustain where you're at right now in your savings. 6 months is ideal. I think a lot of financial people will say 6 months, and it is not an easy thing to do. It may I mean, to make that happen, you may have to cut out Starbucks a couple days a week. You may have to cut out the gas station, candy or whatever that your kids, or in my case, grandkids want. But it can be done to slowly build that savings up, because savings will give you peace of mind as you navigate this versus not having that peace of mind. And then, as I mentioned earlier, don't hesitate to keep an eye on the job market. You can set up job aids on LinkedIn or other sources just to filter jobs in your area to you that you're interested in, that may want to keep an eye on. Doesn't hurt to have that set up already, so you're not starting from zero if this were to happen to you. Uh, one other element I want to talk a little bit about here is, when you're thinking about a contingency plan, it doesn't hurt to have, what if the absolute worst happened to me? So when I think about my situation, what if I lost my job tomorrow and I went 6 months with no luck? Couldn't find a job, couldn't even get hired to shag carts at a grocery store, couldn't have anything. What am I going to look like? What's going to happen during that time? Do I have family? I mean, if I lost my ability to pay rent or a mortgage, do I have family I could go live with? Do I have local food banks or other resources available to help me? Now, again, I don't want to create a panic on this. I just want to say this is just thinking through what could happen if it happened to you. And sometimes that worst case scenario will at least give you peace to navigate a really tough situation. And a lot of times what you'll find out too is, if you have a mortgage, banks will work with you. If you're having struggles with the light bill, utility companies will work with you. There's other options out there. And it doesn't hurt to explore it, so that if you encounter it, at least you know the direction. You don't have that moment where you're grabbing your chest trying to figure out how you're going to survive this. So I'll share just one situation I had. I did have a scenario in a real recent job where I had left another company, went to another company, was going to be a great situation the way I thought about it. Unfortunately, due to some situations that were outside of my control, it ended up in a mass downsizing, and the company's in the process of closing. But what I learned during that time frame was, I applied to probably 50 jobs, and I'm comfortably confident in saying that I probably applied to 50 jobs, had 3 interviews, two that didn't want to move forward, and one that is in the job I am now, and I'm incredibly thankful for it, because it's allowed me to move in a different direction with my career. But that's the reality. Things happen. You don't always know. For me, it worked out. For others, I've got friends that I've been seen from other companies that have been sitting out for 3, 4, 6 months. So contingency planning is something that can help you navigate and give you a little bit of a peace of mind, as well. Annie, anything you want to add to that before I move on?
No, I think that you're spot on. And I think one of the things that you said is really critically important. Think about the worst case scenario. Think about it now, because then you won't be so panicked if that scenario happened. If you've thought it through, then you're more prone to take the actions to minimize that and to mitigate that along the way. And then maybe it's not such, you don't end up in the worst case scenario. But I think some people are often afraid of thinking about the worst case. And I agree with you. It doesn't hurt to think about it, not to panic, but just to think those things through.
Absolutely. So let's talk about something that's probably a little less heavy on this one. So let's talk about evaluating companies for a potential job. So let's just make the assumption that you found out you no longer have a job. So now you're out there, you're in the job market with everyone else, you're trying to figure out your jobs. We've talked about resumes, so I won't necessarily talk much about that at this point in time. But what we consider to be a pretty standard activity, looking for a job, can become a pretty important activity if you're in the situation having been laid off. So a couple steps I want to really kind of just throw out there as ideas, and there's a lot that could be built off this, is, if you're in a situation where you've been downsized, or you're looking at another job and you're worried about being laid off, downsized, restructured, whatever the term you want to use, in do some pre-work before you accept a job. It can save you some heartache on the backside. When you're looking at a job, a lot of times you'll learn about the leadership, the culture, the role expectations, and those are critical. I do not want to take away from that at all. But I also would challenge you, look at the company leaders a little more than you may. What's their history? What's their success been in other companies? And when you see a company and it's had a senior leadership that's gone through several companies and maybe those other companies didn't do that well, it may be an indicator. It's not guaranteed, but it may be an indicator that are they going to do well here if they've had been changing jobs every couple of years or those other companies didn't do so well. It's just something to think about. You also, when you're evaluating a job, use what's available. You can go out to Glassdoor, LinkedIn, you can Google company names. I like to do this. If you're looking at a company, take the company name and add the word news and Google it. See what's going on in that company. It's a simple little catchy thing. I do it at the company I work in, prior companies, just to see what's going on since I've left or what's going on in the company I'm working. But this can give you some idea of some of the themes. Are there challenges that company's facing? Are there things that they're experiencing that you may not want to be a part of? That's just things like that. The other side is look at their financial condition. If they're publicly traded, it's a little easier to do. If they're private, it's going to take a little more digging. It's going to take a little bit more of trying to find out what's going on. Where's the history of that company out? Does it look like they're sustainable? Does it look like they're going to continue on? Has there been a lot of turnover? Has there been downsizing and layoffs in the past? And even something as simple as, you'll hear this in most interviews, why is the position that I'm interviewing for open? Why is that? Now, one element, I've taught a lot of interview courses in the past. One thing I always recommend is when you're being interviewed, interview the company, interview for culture, interview for leadership, interview for role expectations. Ask questions. If you come to an interview and you're not prepared to ask questions, you're not prepared for the interview. That's the way I've taught it. I don't want to insult anybody, but if you don't have questions to ask, you're not prepared. Come up with some good questions. But if you're evaluating a company and you have downsizing on your mind, it doesn't hurt to sit there and ask questions around, hey, what's some of the financial struggles you're having right now, or what are some of the obstacles the company's facing? Just things that they may struggle to give you an answer on, but at least you'll have in your mind and you can go back and research as well. And sometimes if they can't answer questions, that may tell you something. Not always, but it may tell you something. You always want to try to talk to the boss that you'll be reporting to, your supervisor as well, and ask the same questions. Their expectations, role clarity. What's the long term outlook for the company? Things that they can provide some insight into. And then just a few things I'll do here. And again, we could go a lot of different directions here. A couple things I would recommend here is two questions I would have you ask yourself when you're evaluating a company, getting down to make that final decision. Would I be proud to share with my family that I work for this company? That says a lot. Because it'll usually reflect what you know of the company and what the reputation of the company. And then just simply ask, can I see this company around in 10 years? And if you can answer those two questions in a positive fashion, chances are it's a pretty decent opportunity for you. No guarantees. We know things change, we know things happen, but it doesn't hurt to at least analyze and take the opportunity to jump if you can positively answer those two questions. All right, just one quick second.
And I'll give you a break here for a second, Rhett, because I think that what you've been talking about with the companies is absolutely critical. It's what we tell everybody that comes through Changing Focus. Before you even see if a company has jobs, see if you like the company. Because why look for jobs at a company that isn't something that is a values match to you? Because everybody that comes through our program does the Maxwell Disc, the growth version of it, and they find out what their personal values are and where they would fit on a team well. And so we tell them to check. Is there a values match at that company with your values? And anybody can do that without doing a DISC assessment. Think about what your personal values are and look to see if the company is a match for that. And think about, when you look at the company website, I love that you specifically said to look for the news about the company, because one of the things that we see with people is often is that they like to be recognized, and that everybody has different ways of being recognized. Well, you can see on a company's website how they, how they reflect their employees, how they recognize their employees. And if you don't see about the company's employees on the website, then chances are they don't do a lot for that. And so that's a great question to ask at a job interview. How are employees recognized?
Thank you, Annie. All right, let's get into some of the interesting stuff here. So let me start to give you a little bit of an idea of how these decisions are made. So when a company experiences the need to downsize, this is going to be closed door meetings. You're generally going to be in senior level positions. You're aware that there's a downsizing or a layoff coming. But as they start to analyze what's going to happen, they're going to start making decisions on where it's going to happen and who it's going to affect. And usually, leaders that are going to be affected are going to be drawn into the conversations to start selecting who's going to be impacted by this decision. Now, in some cases, when it's an entire wing of a company, entire department, it's everybody. That's just there's no recourse for that, and that happens. Generally, though, it's going to be a headcount decision or a payroll dollar decision. We need to decrease by 10%. We need to decrease by 516 headcount. Whatever the decision criteria is, that's usually how it's going to be made. How the decisions typically are made are what I call the low hanging fruit effect. The low hanging fruit effect. The easiest decisions to meet that criteria are going to be by focusing on several types of people: low performers, those that are resistant to change, those that are negative, those that just can't really provide the value the organization is working. And a lot of that it can be a little subjective, it can be a little questionable. But when you start talking to leaders, they're going to go down to the low end of the performance. The low hanging fruit is why I call it that. And that's who they're going to want to start with so they can protect their high performers. And so what I want to talk about in this section is, when you think about working at a company, your goal is, there's a lot of goals you have, but your goal, especially in the era of downsizing, is to make the decision to eliminate your particular position a really tough decision and painful for those making the decision. Now, it sounds bad, and I don't mean that tongue in cheek or anything like that, but one thing I tell people in leadership is that one of the things you got to figure out pretty quickly is that your performance is being talked about in rooms you're not in. I'm going to repeat that. Your performance is being talked about in rooms you are not in. You are always being analyzed, your performance, what you bring to the company, the level of success you're having. Those are decisions and things that are being talked about all the time. What you control, and it may not always seem this way, sometimes it can seem like, well, I can't change their opinion about me. I can't seem to get people to look at the effort I'm making in. There's things you can do to help improve how people perceive you and make sure that you're seen positively for more than just maybe one or two people who don't like you, don't get along with you, whatever the case is. That's going to happen. That's just human nature at that point. But whenever you take a new job, what I recommend is, right off the bat, find who the top performers are and model their behaviors. Talk to them. Why are they successful? What are they doing that's different, that makes them different? Why are they landing all the sales? Why are they getting all the overtime? Why are they getting the extra assignments, the promotions, the pay increases? What is it that they're doing? And then develop your plan to model that. I also recommend to people, build your brand. You own your brand in an organization. And I'll tell you a story about myself here in a minute. But the brand you have is far beyond just your immediate people that you work with. It goes back to what I said a little bit ago. People are talking about your performance, about how you fit into the organization in different rooms. But you do own your brand. Some of the things you can do to improve your brand, first and foremost, is say yes. When there's an extra activity, stay late. I get it. There may be times you can't do it. Maybe you've got a soccer game or a medical appointment, or something that's going on. I definitely understand that. But be known as the yes person as best as you can handle, so that you also don't overdo it. I've overdone it. I know what it's like to overcommit to things. I've done that far too many times in my life. But that starts to develop your brand, that you're a team player. You're willing to go above and beyond. You're going to do what it takes to get the job done. Also, partner with your supervisor. Ask them simply, what do I need to do to be the best performer in your department? What do I need to do to fill in the blank? get the promotion, make more money, take, grow into another department, whatever it is, but ask those questions. It doesn't hurt to make sure that they know what your goals are. It's all about position yourself at this point in time. As I said earlier, your brand does matter and you can help define this. Also, I'll share why here in a moment, but if your job requires that you're on company calls, and I'm not talking company calls where there's 1,000 people on, you're not going to be able to talk on calls like that very, very openly. But if you've got a team huddle once a week, find ways to speak up on that call if you're not already. Bring value to the table, share a leadership quote, share something you have that's going to help someone else develop, but build your brand by being visible to other leaders, not only in your department, but outside of your department as well. Probably one of the bigger ones that I'll talk about here is be positive. It's it's really tough to overcome the perception of being a negative employee. It's something I've worked with people before, but it takes time. How you can help yourself, especially in a new job when you're trying to position yourself as be that positive person. You're going to work around negative people. You're going to have naysayers. You're going to have folks that hate change. That's just life. There's folks, we all make decisions for ourselves, but do everything you can to avoid the negative reputation. It's okay to push back and have a little healthy tension. That's fine. Healthy tensions is what helps move things forward. But just don't be the nope, 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 nope. Don't be that person. You want to be the person that can be the people can come to. Another one, and Annie's very familiar with this, is failure is an option. You're going to be given opportunities. Be okay with missing the mark. Be okay with feedback. Be okay with making a different decision next time. It'll position you as someone who's willing to grow, willing to learn, easy to coach, and that's not a bad thing to be. That's not a bad place to be. And then also be open to change. Change is inevitable. You're either changing or you're irrelevant in the modern world. Every company's changing. Something we've talked a lot about recently is AI. That world changes almost every day. You have to be in the conversation. You have to be willing to adapt, to move on, to grow. And then let's see here. I think, as I said at the beginning, and I'll share a quick story here, is that the goal is to make it hard to choose your name to be chosen for a layoff. It's not a guarantee, but focus on positioning yourself so that you are seen as that great brand, great worker, great relationally. Yes, you got to make the tough decisions. You're not going to be everybody's best friend. We understand that side of on the business, but position yourself well because it'll help you in the long run. And the story that I've alluded to that I wanted to share here was earlier on in my career, I was getting a little frustrated in HR. I so badly, and by the way, Annie, this was before Maxwell. So this is when I was still in a different situation, but I was so badly wanted to be promoted. And there was a VP that I had at that point in time that I reported to, or she may have been a director. We called her Mo. Some of you on the call will know who Mo is, but her name was Mo. And we were at in Charlotte, North Carolina at an annual meeting, thousands of people, just happened to sit down with her at dinner one night. And I asked for feedback. And the feedback was very pointed. I asked, what do I need to do to position myself to help grow? Some of what I shared with you was off the list she gave me. Speak up on calls. Be the positive person, accept assignments, look for assignments, things that are going to build your brand. That changed everything for me because before that, I didn't have the right mindset. I couldn't understand why other people were getting those opportunities and I wasn't. But I also learned I wasn't positioning myself to be ready for those opportunities to grow and building the right relationships, not only in my department, but outside of my department, so that I had that level of support to be able to grow and with the company at that point in time. Annie, anything you want to add to that before we move on to the final slide?
I think one of the things that you have highlighted here is that we cannot take good care of ourselves when we are passive. You can't just show
I
up
like
for
that.
work. You have to, this is it, I always say that leadership is a verb. And it is, keeping your job is a verb. It's not just about doing what you need to do. It's about finding out what you're not doing and that you need to add into the mix. I love you have been spot on with everything you've said. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let's hope that in this final section we continue to deliver then. Okay, let's get down to the meat and potatoes. And I'll be honest with you, I really thought about starting off with this section, and I intentionally chose not to because if you've never been downsized in your career, you just want to know what it's like, what's going to happen. What I'm going to share here is really based on 27 years of experience in HR. And I throw that number out because it was in my 20, either my first year or my second year, first or second year in HR, we downsized an entire division, a plant, and everything. And it was rough. It was my first time ever experiencing that on a company side, let alone helping employees try to navigate that decision. So you may want to know if you've never experienced this, what happens? What's this like? So, generally speaking, in a company culture, there's going to be some type of rumor mill that's going on. There's going to be word, usually, not always. I'm going to say that. There may be decisions coming. Someone's going to leak something. You may catch your radar. It may happen. It may not. But usually, when there's something coming, it's going to get out somehow. The company there probably should be books written about the rumors that are spread in companies and how they're spread, maybe even a scientific or academic study because it's a very prevalent source of information. But let's just say that you're going to be affected by that. Usually you're not going to know when unless it's a group announcement, and sometimes that happens. A lot of times it's one-on-one. But what may happen is the day this happens, you may hear of downsizing going on, or you may not. There may be times that you're one of the first that are notified, or either individually or in a group, or you may be down the chain a little bit. But typically what's going to happen is there's going to be a meeting that's set up. It may be a normal meeting, it may be a last minute meeting, but you're going to be asked to join a meeting. If you're remote, it's going to be typically like this on Microsoft Teams, some type of venue, and there'll be different people in there. In that meeting, that message is going to be conveyed to you that your position is being affected. It may be immediate, it may be weeks from now, there may be the opportunity to retire, there may be the opportunity to make some decisions, there may not be. It may have happened already. But basically, there'll be whatever options are available are going to be communicated to you. There's going to be conversations around benefits, vacation, when you lose those, what Cobra is, all these things are going to be talked about. And then usually there's going to be a time for questions. My experience with this is that generally speaking, people that are affected by this don't know what questions to ask at that point in time because of the shock and awe factor of what they just had, and that their brain is going 1,000 different directions all at once in different directions, and the what ifs are starting to sink in. So that's usually what happens. What I'm going to recommend to you is a couple things that if this ever does happen to you, a couple things. First off, stay calm. This is information that's being passed on. A decision was already made. Typically, it's not going to be reversed, but that decision has already been made. So do your best to stay calm. You're going to have emotions, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Listen to the details because the details are important. It's okay to say, "Hey, can you give me a moment? I need to get a pen and paper. I'm going to write some things down." There's no harm in asking that. And then if you have questions, ask as many questions as you feel comfortable with. Usually there'll be time baked in there for that. They'll take time to try to answer your questions. And if you can think of it, you also may want to simply ask, "Hey, I know I'm going to have more questions. Who do I contact?" Because you will have more questions once you've had time to think about it. Excuse me. One thing I do want to emphasize here, whatever you do, don't get angry, don't lose your cool, don't blow up. This is important. And you may have to take a few deep breaths. You may have to put yourself on mute so what you're thinking, you're keeping in your head is actually flowing out your mouth, and you don't want them to hear that. There may be different responses that you have, but at this point in time, there's no point getting mad. It's the decision's been made. It's gonna hurt, and anger is a part of that process. But if you get angry and you say some things you can't unsay, or you do some things you can't undo, there's a very high likelihood that whatever perks or benefits were being offered are going to be withdrawn, and you're terminated. and there's nothing from a severance or anything that they can talk about at that point in time. So do your best, stay calm, be polite, say thank you, and then after that's happened, take some time. You're going to need to think, you're going to need to process. It's going to take a couple days. You're going to have emotions. You're going to have all the emotions. You're going to, maybe in some cases, you'll be happy it finally happened because you were miserable in that job, or you're angry, or you cry, or you just feel all these things. This is a traumatic experience to be downsized. It is not something that's just a matter of business. I'll move on. Life is great. No, it's going to take you a moment. Um, excuse me. It's going to take you a moment to digest this. Once you've started to kind of get a handle on that, it's going to cycle back a few times. You're going to remember, and there's usually an email or a packet that you're giving. It's in person. It's time to start to review the information. What are the details? When did this happen? Did I lose access to everything immediately, or do I get things for a little while? And there's some personal files or pictures that I need to get out of there. Um, a lot of times companies will provide access to the employee assistance program. I'm going to say this, I won't hear you, but I want you to repeat after me. If you are downsized, I will use the EAP. I will use the EAP. Why am I stressing this? Because I have used the employee assistance program. You need somebody to talk to that is a neutral source, that is going to give you an unbiased opinion and let you vent and navigate those emotions. If you're offered the EAP, maybe one of your first phone calls that next day is the EAP to set up a conversation. There's nobody too tough. I promise it'll help. It's just an opportunity to be able to be able to navigate what you're experiencing. And then, as I said earlier, give yourself some time. It's going to take time to digest this. It's not easy. There's other resources you may be offered. Not everybody does. There may be outplacement services, resume building, interview skills, job courses. All of this additional piece is meant to help you, and I would encourage you to use it. Get that, brush up that resume that you've already talked to Annie about. Get a different set of eyes on it. Find out strategies for being able to find new jobs, things that maybe you hadn't considered, ways to position yourself that we're not going to go into too much detail. I would also encourage that as you start to navigate what you just heard to searching for a job, your new job is to find a new job. So you were full time before or part time. You're full time or part time now, looking for a new job. That's your new job. Set goals for each day. I'm going to apply to 10 different jobs today, and I'm going to create a spreadsheet or a piece of paper on a pad, and I'm going to track every one of them so that I know if I get a call from Home Depot or Ace True Value that I've already applied to them, and I can kind of at least look up real quickly what job I applied to. One other element of this, and a lot of times this gets overlooked, but if you were downsized, generally you're going to apply for you can apply for unemployment, and you're going to be able to. The arguments I've heard on this, it's not that much money. It's money. It's food on the table. It's a meal for something. It's something if you're in a tough situation. If you fall into that category of I couldn't make it past the next one or two paychecks, don't feel bad about that. That's where you're at. Go ahead, Andy.
Can,
Annie.
can I just say, every month money comes out of your paycheck and the company pays into the state unemployment fund. So why
Absolutely.
not get your money back?
I like what you said there, Andy, because it is you're paying for it already, so you're just getting back kind of what you paid for. But uh, find those other locations that you can, I alluded to earlier. If you're in a really big pinch, food banks, maybe a local church, or other organizations that can help you during this time frame. Uh, you heard me earlier talk about developing that what I should do if I encounter this. Now it's a time to pull that list back out and start to look through my planning. All right, so I've been downsized. I've kind of got a grip on things. I'm talking to the EAP. I've applied for unemployment. I'm starting a job hunt. What are some of the other things that I was looking at that may be a problem during this time? It's good to be able to reflect back on that. The other side that I would really try to wrap this up with here, and I'll share a quick story, is that persistence plus planning will equal results. So again, I'm going to throw that out there. Persistence plus planning will equal results. You've got the plan. You were affected by something that you had no control over. This wasn't your doing. This was a decision made in a boardroom or another part of the company. Okay, so I've been affected by this. I can't change that, but I've got a plan and I'm going to be persistent. My full time job is to find a job. My full time job is to use the resources, find ways to position myself, look for other companies. How are those companies doing? What am I stepping into? All these things that we've talked about today as part of the planning. Now it just comes time to being persistent and executing on that to find that next job. Um, I think back to I've had a lot of this in the last 2 years, but I think back to a couple different situations I found myself in where we were making decisions. One about a year or so ago, it was handled very well, in my opinion. The downsizings are terrible, but there's ones that are handled well and ones that are handled horribly. The one that was handled well was the CEO. We had the entire company on a call, and he just announced, "I here's why. Here's what we're doing. Here's why it happened. We wish you the best. This is what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 hours." And then it was executed after that. I've also been on ones where nobody saw it coming. Nobody was talking about it, and it really shocked people. The reason I share this is because when it comes down to the end of the day, we don't control what we don't control. We're Most of us are employees somewhere. Even CEOs are employees in the sense of reporting to a board or different part of the organization. So we're really all our employees to some degree or another. When it comes down to the navigating the era of downsizing, there is no foolproof plan. I'll throw that out there. But I'm going to come back to a couple things I said right at the start here, and have been themes throughout this. Is don't lose sleep over this if you're working for a job. Just think about it. Have a plan in case it happens. There's always the likelihood it will never happen to you, but if it does, you've got a plan. You've got a way to manage this if you have it. The other side of it is, if you develop a plan and it does happen, you execute the plan or you adjust the plan based on what happens. That alone can bring you peace of mind. That alone can give you a sense of purpose to navigate a really traumatic experience at a traumatic time, when you're the chief breadwinner, maybe you have a sick family member, you're worried about medication, all these things. Having a plan can help you navigate that and move forward towards what we talked about: persistence plus planning equals results. And then lastly, what I'll leave you this is this: you can navigate a downsizing. I look back on people that I've been in a position where I've had to downsize their position, or I've been folks that I knew had been downsized. Generally speaking, the ones that I've stayed contacted have landed, and they may not have landed maybe exactly the way they wanted to, but they landed in a situation that was good for them, and in many cases was actually better for them because the company was in a better situation. If you find yourself in a situation where you've been downsizing, I am a fan of post-it notes. And I didn't have this closer. I was going to have this closer. If you take a post-it note and you just simply write down, "I will get through this," and slap it up on the mirror in your bathroom or somewhere you're going to be by every day, it's such a gentle reminder. This is just a season. It's just temporary. We're going to get through this. We're going to be fine. In the long run, we're going to be able to get back to where I want to be with my family, making the money we want to make, etc. This event does not define who you are. How you respond is going to help define you, but you can navigate the era of downsizing and get through with a good plan and a lot of persistence to that next opportunity. So Annie, that is all I had for today, and that was a lot. But again, I can't say I appreciate enough the opportunity to be here.
Well, I can't say enough about the value that you have provided to everybody that is live with us today and the people who will see the recordings at the places where it will sit on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook. This has been phenomenal, Rhett. And I can't not emphasize more what you've said about the importance of planning. Pull out your resume. Everybody who's on this or watching this needs to pull out their resume. Get your resume up to date today, because then if something happens, all you have to do is add on the last position or even add on a few things that you've accomplished. Like Jose posted on LinkedIn, he's watching on LinkedIn. Get on LinkedIn today, learn how to use it, build your network, because those are things that you should be doing, we should be doing all the time anyway, and they will be steps in your plan that you have already checked off, and you can get on to the next thing. I think, it's just really the way you laid it out, and the way you ended it with persistence plus planning equals results. It's, that's the truth. That's the honest to goodness truth. And I have personally witnessed, not experienced, but I've witnessed from the outside a bad downsizing. Years ago, I participated in a Toastmasters at a company that was in the middle of splitting into two. And they were letting some people go in that process, and they were calling people into these meetings that you talked about. And when they got back to their desk, they found a box and the official notice, and they needed to be out of the building within an hour. And that was just inflicting terrible mental things on these people. And I hope that that kind of thing doesn't go on like that very often. But I have heard of people having access to the company network being turned off, just like that when they've been downsized. So maybe, it's a good idea to keep personal stuff off your company laptop if you have it.
Annie, that's a good
Anyway.
point. It really is, because I've also tried to help people navigate that have been cut off, trying to recapture that information, and it's challenging at best.
So I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we will make sure that Rhett answers them. This has just been a wealth of information, and part of what I think is so valuable about what you've just presented, Rhett, is this is timeless. This is not what you have presented and taught today isn't something that is just for today. The information that you've given everybody is applicable for years from now. And I hope that everybody takes this to heart. And it's also, it helps us to prepare for a negative future. But I think you also gave ways and helped people to just become a better employee at the company that they're at. And so that helps in your everyday career, not just when you're being let go.
Good point, Annie. Thank you again for allowing me to be here today.
Well, thank you so much. I don't see anything questions in the chat right now. So I'm going to give your voice a break, and I'm going to talk about a couple of things, and we'll give people a chance to put something up. And if they don't, maybe they'll put questions later. So one of the things that we do at LTI, besides our Changing Focus program, which if you go to our website, click on the Changing Focus tab, you'll find information and registration there. It's free. It's virtual. We play with Legos. We paint. It's a good time. We supplement the Department of Defense mandated transition assistance program. We're not replacing them. We supplement them. And we do it where you can be in the comfort of your own home, and you'll meet people across the world and across the services. But in addition to that, as I said, we do the corporate and government leadership and communications training. But since we're a part of Maxwell, we also are a Live to Lead host. And that is a learning opportunity, a leadership learning opportunity provided by Maxwell Leadership that we as Maxwell Leadership certified team members can choose to host if we want. And we are doing that at the Leader Transition Institute. Our first session is this Friday. We're doing it 3 times. We're doing it on Friday in the morning. We're doing it November 15th in the afternoon. And Rhett, you don't know this, you're going to think we're absolutely nuts. On February 20th, which is National Leadership Day, we are doing L2L in the middle of the night. We're launching at midnight on the 20th. And there's some logic behind that. There are people who work mids. So they're up during the middle of the night and they're sleeping during the day. They don't want to be up for L2L then. So we're going to serve them. But it's also timed so that it's early in the morning for people who are in Europe, and then at a reasonable time for people who are in the Pacific. And so we're going to reach across the globe with our midnight screening of L2L in February. So you can click on the Live to Lead tab there. And so I see that there aren't any questions right now, but if I see questions show up later on the post thread, I will make sure that I tag you in them, and so that you can reach out and answer. Thank you so much
Outstanding. Thank
again.
you.
I can't say thank you enough. I hope you have a great rest of your day and get rid of whatever it is that your grandchild was kind enough to gift you with.
The
Shall
gifts
we
that keep on giving.
do that? So thank you. And thank you to everybody who's been on. We'll see you here again the third Tuesday of November at 12 o'clock noon. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.